He married me on December 10th. Then I found Christmas photos of him with his real wife and kids in Texas, dated 15 days after our wedding. I sent Laura our wedding photos. She called me back immediately, sobbing. "How long?" she asked. "How long has this been going on?" That's when I realized the full scope of his lies. I was just his second fake wife. And David? He'd lived to regret the day he met me and the $18,600 he took to fund his double life. Because he wasn't just a cheater. He wasn't moving on. He was a bigamist. Maybe you're wondering how he did it, how I found out, and what I did afterwards. Let me back up to 18 months ago, when I thought I was the luckiest girl in Atlanta. I'm Riley, 26, and I work as a data analyst for Meridian Insurance. I'm the kind of person who reads Agatha Christie novels for fun and notices when people's stories don't add up. I should have trusted my instincts about David from the beginning. I met him at a coffee shop near my office. He was sitting alone, typing on his laptop, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. When he smiled at me, I felt that stupid flutter in my stomach that romance novels always talk about. "You look like someone who appreciates good coffee," he said, nodding at my complicated order. "Double-shot oat milk latte with vanilla," I said, guilty as charged. "David Mitchell." He extended his hand. "And you are?" "Riley." "Just Riley? Like Cher?" I laughed despite myself. "Riley Patterson. That was March 15th, 2023. I remember the exact date because I wrote about it in my journal that night. Met someone today. Probably too good to be true. But maybe not? God, I was such an idiot. David told me he was a pharmaceutical sales rep who traveled for work. He had an apartment in Buckhead, drove a black BMW, and always paid for dinner in cash. Big bills, too. Hundreds and fifties like it was nothing. "Sales must be good," I said after he dropped $200 on dinner at the Optimist. "I work hard," he said, kissing my hand, "but you're worth it." The red flags were there from the start, but I ignored them because I was falling in love. He never answered his phone when I was around. David told me he was in between places, crashing with a buddy while waiting to close on a condo. He said the guy had a strict no-guess rule after some ex brought drama into the apartment and nearly got them evicted. "It's his space, his rules," David said with a shrug. "I don't want to screw things up before I'm out of there." It sounded reasonable, at the time. He stayed at my place 5-6 nights a week, did laundry there, cooked, paid for groceries. It felt like he lived with me. I know how it sounds. But when you're in love and someone's giving you all their time, answering every call, texting all day, you start justifying things you shouldn't. David proposed 6 months later on September 22nd. We were at Piedmont Park, watching the sunset, and he got down on one knee with a 2-carat diamond ring. "Riley Patterson, you're the love of my life. Will you marry me?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. We had a small wedding on December 10th. Just 20 people at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. David said his family couldn't make it because of business commitments, but that was fine. I wasn't close to many relatives either. My best friend Katie was my maid of honor. She pulled me aside right before the ceremony. "Riley, are you sure about this? Something feels off." "I know everything I need to know," I said, adjusting my dress. "He loves me." "But what about his living situation? You've never even been to his place." "Katie, please. This is my wedding day." I should have trusted that feeling, but I didn't, not until it was too late. After the wedding, David said his condo purchase had fallen through. He'd found another place, but it needed renovations. We'd move in together once the work was done. "Just a few more months, baby, then we'll have our dream house." I believed him. I believed everything he told me. For 3 months, I lived in this weird bubble where I was married but still living like I was single. David would visit 5 nights a week, but he'd always leave early for client meetings. That's when the money requests started. 3 weeks after our wedding, David asked to use my credit card for a temporary business expense. His company credit card had been compromised, he said, and he needed to book a hotel for a client meeting. $2,400 charged to the Ritz-Carlton. "I'll pay you back as soon as the company reimburses me," he promised. 2 weeks later, another emergency. His personal account was frozen due to suspicious activity, and he needed to borrow $3,000 to close a deal. I transferred the money without question because he was my husband. Then came the big one. In February, David said he had an opportunity to invest in a pharmaceutical startup with some colleagues. He needed $8,000 for his share, and his assets were tied up in the condo purchase. This could set us up for life, Riley. I just need you to trust me. I emptied my savings account for him. Over 4 months, David had borrowed $18,600 from me, always with promises to pay me back as soon as his deals closed or his company reimbursed him. He married me for money, but I didn't realize that yet. I was still playing the devoted wife, waiting for our life together to start. Then on March 8th, I decided to surprise him. I'd been feeling disconnected from my own marriage. David was always working or traveling, and I missed him. So I took a half day from work and drove to the address he'd given me for his temporary apartment downtown. The building was nice, modern, probably $2,500 a month for a one-bedroom. I told the doorman I was David Mitchell's wife and asked if I could wait in the lobby for him. He was staying with his friend, Bob Randall, I added, thinking Bob could hardly complain if I didn't enter his apartment. I smiled as I imagined how David would laugh at my ambush. The doorman looked confused. "Ma'am, I've been working here for 5 years. There's no David Mitchell or Bob Randall living in this building." My stomach dropped. "Are you sure? He said he was staying here while his place gets renovated. Maybe he's using a different name? Or staying with someone else?" I sat in my car for 20 minutes trying to process what had just happened. My hands were shaking. But what I did next? That's when it really unraveled. I went home and did what I do best. I started digging through data. First, I searched public records for David Mitchell in Georgia. Nothing came up for any of the addresses he'd given me, but I found a David Mitchell who owned a house in Decatur. Different address, but same name and approximate age. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I reverse searched his phone number. The results made my blood run cold. David's phone number was registered to a David Mitchell in Dallas, Texas. Not Atlanta. Dallas. I stared at my laptop screen trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I couldn't breathe. Why would his phone be registered in Texas if he lives in Atlanta? Unless he doesn't live in Atlanta. I spent the next 4 hours falling down a rabbit hole of public records, social media searches, and Google investigations. What I found shattered my entire world. David Mitchell, age 34, pharmaceutical sales rep, lived at 4782 Maple Grove Drive in Dallas, Texas, with his wife Laura Mitchell, age 29, and their 2 children, Emma, age 7, and Connor, age 4. I found their Christmas photos on Laura's Facebook page. David in a red sweater, holding Connor on his lap, Laura kissing his cheek under mistletoe, Emma making bunny ears behind his head, posted on December 25th, 15 days after he married me. I threw up in my kitchen sink. He has a family. He has a wife and kids in Texas, and he married me anyway. I sat on my kitchen floor crying and trying to understand how this was possible. David had been living a double life. He wasn't just cheating on his wife with me, he'd committed bigamy. He'd married me while already being married to someone else. Laura Mitchell worked as a kindergarten teacher at Hillcrest Elementary in Dallas. Her Instagram was full of classroom photos and family pictures. She looked sweet and normal and completely unaware that her husband was a bigamist. David's LinkedIn showed he worked for Hartwell Pharmaceuticals, based in Dallas. His employment history showed he'd been with the company for 8 years. 8 years. That meant he'd been in Dallas the entire time I'd known him. The business trips weren't trips at all. They were his real life. I was the trip. I scrolled through Laura's photos, looking for clues about their marriage. Their wedding photos were from 2018, a big church ceremony with at least 200 people, Laura in a gorgeous princess dress, David in a black tux. Nothing like our small ceremony at the Botanical Garden. She got the real wedding, I got the fake one. In her photos from the past year, David was always there. Birthday parties, school events, family vacations. He was playing the devoted husband and father in Dallas while playing the traveling salesman boyfriend in Atlanta. I found photos of him at Emma's school Christmas play. December 15th, 5 days after our wedding. He'd married me on a Saturday and was back in Dallas by the following Friday, watching his daughter perform in her school play. How is this even possible? I called my best friend Katie and just said, "Google this man right now." "Riley, what's wrong? You sound..." "David Mitchell, Dallas, Texas. Just Google him." 5 minutes later, Katie called me back. "Oh my God, Riley. Oh my God." "I know. He has a family. He has kids." "I know." "Riley, you need to call the police." "Not yet. I need to think." I spent the rest of the weekend piecing together David's double life. He'd been coming to Atlanta once or twice a week for over a year, probably telling Laura he was on business trips. The expensive dinners, the cash payments, the BMW, all of it was probably funded by his real job in Dallas. But the $18,600 he'd borrowed from me, that money was supposed to be supporting his real family in Texas. I found the answer in my own credit card statements. While I'd been lending David money for business opportunities, Laura had been posting on Facebook about financial struggles, working extra shifts, selling furniture to make ends meet. That manipulative bastard. David wasn't just a bigamist. He was stealing from his real family to fund his fake life with me. I'd read enough mystery novels to know that revenge is a dish best served cold. David thought he was so clever, managing two separate lives, but he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. I spent Monday planning my approach. I could have called the police, but bigamy is hard to prove and even harder to prosecute. I could have confronted David directly, but he'd probably just disappear and start over somewhere else. No, I want him to face consequences. Real consequences. I decided to start with Laura. I created a fake email account and sent her a message. Hi Laura, I hope this doesn't sound crazy, but I think we need to talk about David. I have some information that might be important. Can you call me? My number is 404-555-7829, a friend. I included a photo of David smiling, standing by his car in front of my apartment on his own. She called me 2 hours later. Hello? This is Laura Mitchell. You sent me an email about my husband? Her voice was sweet and trusting. Nothing like mine had sounded when I'd found out about David's lies. Laura, my name is Riley. I'm calling because I think David has been lying to both of us. I'm sorry, I don't understand. How do you know my husband? I took a deep breath. Laura, I need to tell you something that's going to be really hard to hear. David and I got married 3 months ago. Silence. That's impossible, she said finally. David and I have been married for 6 years. We have 2 children together. I know. I've seen the photos on your Facebook page. Emma and Connor are beautiful. How do you know my children's names? Because I've been investigating your husband. Laura, David has been living a double life. He told me he was single and lived in Atlanta. We got married in December. You're lying. Her voice was shaking. David travels for work, but he would never. I can prove it. Do you have WhatsApp? I can send you photos from our wedding. 5 minutes later, I sent Laura our wedding photos. David in his black suit, me in my white dress, kissing at the altar. She called me back immediately, sobbing. How long? She asked. How long has this been going on? I met him last March. We got married December 10th. December 10th? She was crying harder now. That was a Saturday. He told me he was at a pharmaceutical conference in Miami. Laura, I'm so sorry. I had no idea he was married. He told me he was single. Those business trips, she whispered. Oh God, all those business trips. How often does he travel? Once or twice a week, sometimes 3 times. He's been doing it for over a year. Her voice broke. He said the company was expanding, that he was up for a promotion. We talked for an hour. Laura told me about David's recent behavior changes, how he'd become secretive about his phone, how he'd started working late and traveling more, how he'd been spending money on things they couldn't afford. He bought a BMW last year, she said. Cash, $28,000. He said he got a bonus, but when I asked to see the pay stub, he said the company paid bonuses differently. Laura, he's been borrowing money from me, $18,600 in the past 4 months. $18,000? We're behind on our mortgage. I've been working extra hours just to pay for groceries. That son of a bitch. Laura, what do you want to do about this? I don't know. I can't think straight. My whole life is a lie. I have an idea, but I need you to trust me. I told Laura my plan. It was risky, but it would expose David completely and make sure he faced real consequences for what he'd done. Are you sure you want to do this? I asked. Once we start, there's no going back. He destroyed my life, Laura said, her voice steady for the first time since we'd started talking. He married another woman while I was home with his children. Yes, I want to do this. The plan was simple, but devastating. David was scheduled to come to Atlanta the following Thursday for his usual business trip. Instead of staying at his mysterious temporary apartment, I was going to invite him to spend the night at my place. We were married, after all. While he was there, Laura would fly to Atlanta with the kids. We'd confront him together, But that was just the opening act. I spent Tuesday and Wednesday gathering evidence. I printed bank statements showing David's loans from me. I printed our marriage certificate. I collected receipts from all the expensive dinners and gifts he'd bought me. Laura gathered evidence from Dallas, bank statements showing unusual cash withdrawals, credit card bills for expenses in Atlanta, photos of David at family events on dates when he was supposed to be with me. We also did something else. We called Hartwell Pharmaceuticals. "Hi, I'm calling to verify employment for David Mitchell," I told the HR department. "He's applying for a rental property. I can confirm that David Mitchell is employed with Hartwell Pharmaceuticals as a senior sales representative. Can you tell me about his travel schedule? He mentioned he travels frequently for work." "Mr. Mitchell covers the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area. His territory doesn't require overnight travel." Bingo. David's company had no idea he was making regular trips to Atlanta. He'd been using vacation days and personal time to maintain his double life, probably telling his boss he was visiting family. Thursday arrived. David texted me that morning. "Hey, beautiful. Landing at 3 p.m. Can't wait to see you. Dinner at Bacchanalia? Actually, why don't you come to my place? I'll cook. We need to talk about our future." "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. See you at 6. He had no idea what was waiting behind that door. David arrived with flowers and a bottle of wine, just like always. He kissed me at the door and handed me the roses. "You look beautiful," he said. "What did you want to talk about?" "Let's have dinner first." I'd made his favorite meal, steak and mashed potatoes. We ate and made small talk, just like a normal couple. David told me about his client meetings and asked about my job. This is probably the last normal conversation we'll ever have, I thought. After dinner, I poured him another glass of wine. "David, I've been thinking about us moving in together." "I know, baby. Soon. The big deal I'm working on should close next month, and then—" "I went by your apartment building last week." He went very still. "What?" "The doorman said there's no David Mitchell in the building. Hasn't been for years." "That's impossible. He must be new. He's worked there for 5 years." David's face changed. The charming smile disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Riley, I can explain," he started, but was cut off as the doorbell rang. "Actually," I said, standing up, "I think someone else wants to hear your explanation." I opened the door, and Laura walked in with Emma and Connor. David's wine glass didn't just drop, it exploded against the hardwood floor, red wine splattering across the white walls like blood. His face went completely white, then gray, like he was about to pass out. "No," he whispered, backing away from the door. "No, no, no, this isn't happening." "Hello, David," Laura said, her voice steady and strong. "Kids, say hi to Daddy." David's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the back of the couch to steady himself, staring at his family like they were ghosts. Emma ran to David and hugged his legs. "Daddy, Mommy said we were taking a surprise trip to see you." David stared at me over his daughter's head, his face white as paper. "Laura, what are you doing here? Kids, go wait outside." "No," Laura said, "they're staying. I want them to see this." "Why won't you hug me, Daddy?" Emma's face crumpled in confusion. David's breathing became rapid and shallow. He was hyperventilating. "Laura, what? How did you—" He couldn't form complete sentences. His eyes darted between Laura, me, and the children. "The kids shouldn't be here. This isn't— They can't see this." "See what, David?" Laura's voice was ice cold. "See their father who's been lying to everyone?" David ran his hands through his hair, pulling at it. "This is insane. You can't just show up here. This is— How did you even find—" "I told her about us," I said calmly. "About our wedding. About the $18,600 you borrowed from me." The color drained from David's face completely. He looked like he might vomit. "You told her what?" His voice cracked like a teenager's. "Daddy, are you sick?" Connor asked, tugging on David's pant leg. "You look funny." David stared down at his 4-year-old son, and for a moment I thought he might actually cry. Laura turned to me. "Riley, would you like to tell my husband what we discovered?" I smiled. "David, I'd like you to meet your wife, Laura, and these are your children, Emma and Connor." "I don't understand," Emma said, looking between Laura and me. "Who is she, Daddy?" "This is Daddy's other wife," Laura said, her voice calm and matter-of-fact. "Daddy married this lady 3 months ago while he was still married to Mommy." Emma's face scrunched up in confusion. "You can't have 2 wives." You're right, sweetheart, you can't. That's called bigamy, and it's against the law. Daddy, why is everyone upset? Connor asked, his voice small and scared. David knelt down and tried to hug his son, but Connor pulled away. Kids, why don't you sit on the couch and watch something on your tablets? Laura said gently. Daddy and the grown-ups need to talk. As soon as the children were distracted, David exploded. Are you out of your mind? He said to Laura with gritted teeth, trying to keep his voice down for his kids' sake, his composure completely shattered. Bringing my kids here? To her apartment? To your wife's apartment, Laura corrected calmly. She's not my wife, David yelled, then immediately looked panicked that he'd said it so loudly. The children looked up from their tablets, startled. Actually, I am, I said, pulling out our marriage certificate. December 10th, 2023, Atlanta Botanical Garden. Remember? David stared at the paper like it was a death sentence. Finally, he found his voice. Laura, let me explain. Explain what? How you married another woman? How you've been stealing money from both of us? How you've been living a double life for over a year? It's not what you think. I think you're a liar and a criminal, I said. I think you married me to get access to my money while your real family was struggling to pay their mortgage. David looked at the door, calculating his escape. Don't even think about it, Laura said. The police are already on their way. They weren't, but he didn't know that. David tried one last time to manipulate the situation. Look, I know this looks bad, but I can explain everything. Riley, I love you. Laura, I love you too. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. You love us? Laura laughed bitterly. You stole $18,000 from Riley while I was working overtime to keep our house. You told me you were single, I said. You married me while your wife was at home with your children. I was going to leave Laura, David said desperately. I just needed time to figure out how to do it without hurting the kids. By committing bigamy? Laura asked. By stealing money? By lying to everyone? I never meant for it to go this far. Well, it did go this far, I said, and everyone's going to know about it. This can't be happening, he muttered, pacing in small circles. This can't be happening. My life is over. My job, my house, everything. Yes, Laura said simply. It is. David suddenly lunged for his phone. I need to call my lawyer. I need to— Your lawyer? I laughed. For what? To help you explain how you committed bigamy? The word bigamy hit David like a physical blow. He stopped pacing and just stood there swaying slightly. I could go to jail, he whispered. Oh God, I could actually go to jail. You are going to jail, David, Laura corrected. The kids— David looked at Emma and Connor, his face crumpling. Look, they don't need to find out what I did. We can work things out between us. Nobody else needs to know. Everyone already knows, I said, holding up my phone. I posted our wedding photos on Facebook an hour ago. Tagged you, your family, your coworkers. David's legs gave out. He collapsed onto the floor, sitting with his back against the wall. You destroyed my life, he said, looking up at me with genuine terror in his eyes. No, Laura said, sitting down across from him. You destroyed your own life, and ours. Daddy, why are you on the floor? Emma asked, climbing down from the couch. David tried to pull himself together for his daughter, but his hands were shaking uncontrollably. I made some bad choices, sweetheart, he said, his voice barely audible. Are you in trouble? She asked. David looked up at Laura and me, then back at his daughter. Yes, baby, Daddy's in very big trouble. Just then, David's phone started buzzing with calls and text messages. His brother, his mother, his coworkers. Everyone wanted to know if the video was real. My career is ruined, David said, slumping. Good, Laura said. Maybe you should have thought about that before you married someone else. The blows started the next morning. David's employer fired him for moral turpitude and conduct unbecoming. The bigamy charges meant he couldn't work in pharmaceutical sales anymore, too much liability for the company. Laura filed for divorce and got temporary custody of the kids. David would be allowed supervised visitation once a week. But I wasn't done with David yet. 3 days after the confrontation, Laura called me from Dallas. Riley, you need to see what I found when I went through David's home office. She sent me photos that made my blood run cold. David hadn't just been running a simple bigamy scheme. He'd been planning this for over 2 years. I found a folder labeled Atlanta Project hidden in his desk, Laura texted. There were printed emails, rental listings, even a timeline for establishing residency. This wasn't spontaneous, it was calculated. The emails were the most damning. Messages to apartment complexes in Atlanta dating back to early 2022, almost a year before we met. David had been planning to establish a second life long before I was even in the picture, but the worst discovery was yet to come. "Riley!" Laura called me that night, her voice shaking. "I found his other phone." "What other phone?" "A burner phone hidden in his toolbox. There are messages to other women. You weren't his first Atlanta wife. You were just the most successful one." I felt sick. Other women? 3 of them. Jennifer, Ashley, and someone named Monica. He was dating all of you at the same time, telling everyone he was between places and waiting for his condo to close. Laura forwarded me the messages. David had been running the exact same con on multiple women, borrowing money, promising marriage, creating elaborate backstories about his living situation. "He proposed to Ashley last November," Laura continued, "1 month before he married you. She said no because something felt off about him." "How much money did he steal total?" "From the text messages I can see, at least $60,000, maybe more." This changed everything. David wasn't just a bigamist, he was a serial con artist who'd been victimizing women for years. I called the prosecutor the next morning. "Mr. Collins, I have new evidence about David Mitchell. This wasn't just bigamy, it was systematic fraud targeting multiple women." 2 hours later, Laura and I were in the DA's office with a box full of evidence. The burner phone, the Atlanta Project folder, bank records showing cash withdrawals corresponding to trips to Atlanta. "Mr. Mitchell is looking at federal fraud charges now," the prosecutor told us. "Wire fraud, mail fraud, and organized criminal activity. We're talking 10 to 15 years, not the 18 months we originally discussed." But the revenge I was most proud of came when David's children learned the truth. Emma, his 7-year-old, drew a picture at school titled "My Family." It showed Laura, Connor, and herself. No David. When the teacher asked where Daddy was, Emma said, "Daddy married another lady and lied to everyone. Mommy says he has to live somewhere else now because lying is wrong." The picture got sent home and Laura posted it on Facebook with the caption, "When your 7-year-old understands morality better than their father." The post went viral, 50,000 shares. David's entire extended family, his former co-workers, his college friends, everyone saw it. But I saved the best surprise for last. 6 months after David's arrest, I got a call from Ashley, one of the other women he'd been dating. "Riley, I saw the news about David. I wanted to thank you for exposing him." "Thank me?" "He stole $8,000 from me last year. I never thought I'd get it back. But after the fraud charges were filed, I was able to sue him in civil court. I just got a judgment." It turned out that once David's criminal case became public, all of his victims started coming forward. Jennifer, Ashley, Monica, and 2 other women I hadn't even known about. We formed a Facebook group called David Mitchell Victims, where we shared our stories and evidence. The group grew to over 200 members, not all victims, but people who wanted to support us and share similar experiences. The media attention was incredible. Local news, then national news, then a podcast called The Bigamist that did a 6-part series on David's crimes. David went from being an unknown pharmaceutical sales rep to being the poster child for romance fraud in America. His mugshot became a meme. His story was used in training presentations for fraud investigators. A detective in Chicago told me they called elaborate romance cons pulling a David Mitchell. The final nail in his coffin came during sentencing. The judge asked if any victims wanted to make impact statements. All 6 of us showed up. Laura spoke first, with Emma and Connor sitting in the front row. "Your Honor, David Mitchell didn't just steal money from us. He stole years of our lives. He made us question our judgment, our worth, our ability to trust anyone." Ashley was next. "He told me I was the love of his life while he was saying the same thing to 5 other women. He made each of us feel special while treating all of us like ATM machines." When it was my turn, I looked directly at David. "You thought you were smarter than all of us. You thought women were easy targets who wouldn't fight back. You were wrong on both counts." David was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. He'll be eligible for parole in 8 years when Emma is 15 and Connor is 12. Laura and I don't talk regularly, but we send each other updates on the anniversaries. She remarried last year to a kindergarten teacher at her school. Emma calls him Dad now. The other victims and I stay in touch through our Facebook group. We've become advocates for romance fraud awareness, speaking at conferences and helping other women recognize the warning signs. As for me, I kept my job, kept my apartment, and learned to trust my instincts again. I also learned something else. When someone's story doesn't add up, there's usually a reason. But I wasn't completely done with David yet. Last month, I got a letter from him in federal prison. A pathetic, whining letter about how sorry he was and how he'd learned his lesson. The letter ended with, "I know what I did was wrong, but I'm still a human being who deserves a second chance. Deep down, I know you still care about me. Could you find it in your heart to forgive me?" I wrote him back. One sentence. "The only thing I care about is that you're exactly where you belong." Then I sent copies of his letter to Laura, Ashley, Jennifer, Monica, and our Facebook group. We all had a good laugh about his second chance request. David thought he was playing a game where he was the only one who knew the rules, but he forgot that smart women are dangerous when they work together. And the best part? He still has 7 years left to think about that mistake. The $18,600 he stole from me? The court ordered full restitution plus interest. I'll be getting monthly payments from his prison commissary earnings for the next decade. Every month, when that $47 check arrives, I'm reminded that justice isn't just about punishment. Sometimes it's about watching someone who thought they were untouchable learn that actions have consequences. And those consequences last a very, very long time. Hope you enjoyed this tale. What did you think about it, and would you have acted the same way, or have you ever had major family issues over money, betrayal, or other things? Drop your stories in the comments. Let's talk about them. And more importantly, let's all learn from them, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more real-life stories you won't forget in a hurry.